Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of my Retro World Expo interview podcast compilation thing. And I'm not going to re-explain it and waste your time because I already went over what this is before, but I will warn you that this is the part where we start to get audio issues. At one point, my lav mic's battery died, so I was able to use the guest's lav mic to get both of our audio, which means just what I was saying kind of got a little bit maybe not as clear, which is fine. It's all about the guest, not about me anyway. But later on, both the lavs died, and we had to make use of the boom mic that was sitting in the distance, which means it's going to be a lot more echoey. And as much as I tried processing it, if you drop off at this one, I don't blame you at all once the audio starts getting bad. But don't worry. Much love to the people whose audio dropped off on. I will make sure to get them involved in other content because they're all awesome people, and I just was trying my best to get to as many of these cool people as possible, just to kind of share our conversations with you all and make you feel like you were hanging out there with us. But anyway, let's jump right in, and hopefully this one is still going to be enjoyable. The people certainly were. It's just hopefully the audio is going to be good enough. What's up, Greg? Great to freaking see you again, man.
I know, man.
It's been too long.
Yeah, 2 years since we met in person.
I think so, yeah, since the last one.
A little over 2, yeah.
Craziness. But thanks for making the trip out. I always love doing these hangouts and stuff like that. The expo, I'm sure, is going to be awesome.
I'm excited.
Certainly was the last couple times. So
yeah, this is our first time with Laser Bear doing anything like this. So this is This is really neat for us. I've got a few of my staff with me today or this weekend, and it's going to be really cool. It'd be nice to meet everybody or meet people in person. Like, I've always been the behind the website kind of guy. So
yeah, now you get to be out in it. I didn't realize this was like your first expo doing this, but this is actually perfect because you got a ton of friends around. So
yeah,
if you
definitely.
need any help, if anything breaks, especially if anything breaks, you got half the best techs in retro here hanging out with us. So
oh yeah,
we were Artemio and a bunch of people, and we're at my house yesterday. And I got a new arcade machine, and I'm just kind of looking over at one moment, and Artemio, Jose, Roland, a bunch of other people are all just working on my arcade machine, and I'm like, this is surreal. I imported the best of the best. I didn't mean to do it for my own labor, but
gonna pimp out your arcade machine this weekend.
Good thing too, though, it arrived busted, so good to have the help. But
nice.
That was kind of funny. So you drove all the way out here, I'm assuming then?
Yeah.
Super long.
Oh yeah, 24 hours in the car.
Oh, so did you just rent a giant van? Do you have a trailer behind you?
So the two people with me, so my mom actually runs the shipping portion of Laser Bear. So
oh, awesome.
She came down and so did my dad, and we're driving in my dad's truck.
Nice.
So there's plenty of room in the back. It's a big, crew cab kind of truck.
Cool.
So we put most of the product back in the covered backup section of the truck, and then whatever didn't fit there went in the back seat, and I rode in the back, and we'll be switching out drivers and that kind of thing on the drive. You know what? It wasn't terrible. Only ran into a little bit of construction, so that wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I think the worst part was the last hour. It was an extra 45 minutes of driving because of all the traffic here outside of Connecticut, outside of Hartford.
Yeah.
But
yeah, everybody said that too, and it's funny because the GPS routed everybody around New York. Because that was the thing, is it's not just New York. You start cutting through southern Connecticut, and if you went on the wrong highway, you could have added 2 hours to the journey. Yeah. But even going the other routes, people said they got stuck. So
yeah, so it is what it is. You get there, and that's what matters, really.
Yeah. Did you stop at a hotel, or did you do that crazy thing where you drive the whole way through and switch drivers?
I know we stopped at a hotel, so we did 11 hours yesterday or Wednesday, and then yesterday we did the rest of the trip. So
cool.
It wasn't as bad, but.
Do you are you used to those long trips, or is this a brand
growing
new
up?
thing?
We did it all the time.
We never did that growing up. The farthest we ever drove was I think 2.5, 3 hours, and it was a nightmare. I was like, why are we just in this little tin can with wheels on it? Let me out. But
so I grew up in the Midwest, and if you wanted to do anything, you were either flying or you're driving. And flying, we could never afford growing up, so we drove everywhere. Every summer, we would do family trip or two, and we would go all over the place. Funny enough, this is actually my first time in this portion of the country, so it was really neat kind of seeing all the, the roadside sites as you're driving through. And
Yeah. So you've, I wouldn't recommend going to Boston only because it's going to be an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back. But
well,
if you wanted to do that, it's here. And on the way home, if you wanted to see New York City, a lot of people don't like to drive in it, but it's super convenient to like go to one of the places in the upper part around the city and then just hop on a train and come in and out. So at least you got options if you want to see anything.
Yeah, I think on our trip back, we got to get back quick because my dad has to be back at work on Tuesday or something. So we're right after the convention ends on Sunday. We're knocking our boots into the car and doing 7 hours first night, and then we'll do the rest of it until midnight the next night. So it's rough, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's
you gotta do what you gotta do when you're doing travel stuff like this.
And it's shaping up to look like it's going to be a pretty packed expo. I hope. I mean, just even the people that aren't hanging out here, like just people that are getting in for the expo, are already seeing them start to pile in. So it should be pretty good. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I mean we brought a lot of stuff, and one thing I was really worried about coming to an expo like this is selling modding stuff isn't something that is as easy to sell to somebody who's just passing by. If they're interested in this hobby, they have already, ordered 100%. Or bought from somebody in this community online. Yeah. So we brought in a lot of different things kind of with us. So didn't bring a lot of quantity of anything in particular, but then we also, so we just got licensing to sell articulated toys. So we brought 2 boxes of articulated toys that we've been printing on, printers that had just been down for a few days because they were, we didn't have, retro mod stuff to print on them. So we just loaded them up with these little toys that we could print. We brought some dice boxes with dice in them. So because I know there's some RPG crowd that come through here, and just different things we throw out that maybe it'll appeal to somebody, and we can have a conversation with them, talk about what it is that LaserBear does, and we've branched out so much farther than I would have ever expected as a company, and I think that's just kind of how it goes in this retro community. You start working on projects, and you're like, oh, but this would be so much cooler to do. And
you either kind of evolve and grow with it, or you just do your thing and leave. So it's obviously, we saw the path you took, and you get some really awesome stuff coming out.
Yeah, so. I mean, I brought those new things with me this trip, like that big monitor that just the whole retro create crowd is circled around watching people play on it.
Yeah. So is there any chance of finding stock of those panels?
Unfortunately, no.
All right. Then I don't even want, no disrespect, I don't even want to talk about it because it's not your fault. It's not like we're sitting here going, I know something you don't know. Like we're trying to find it.
I spent a better part of 2 years talking to everybody in the LCD market.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even begin to show like where that kind of went, and it sucks. But I mean, it's an industry that has moved on from that size, that shape. 4x3, nobody wants to make.
Yeah, it's weird. I can't understand it.
What's really weird about not wanting to support 4x3 as resolution is you can still get that same width of 1080p that everybody likes, that 1920. But if you do a 4x3 version, you're at 1440 height. That is a ton of real space for creators. Like a 4x3 monitor would be amazing for anybody that does art.
Yeah.
Like not only gaming, but there's so many so many different areas that can be done. Yeah, old 4x3 monitors came in 1024 by 768 resolution, but you can make new monitors. You could have a 4K width with almost double the height of a 1440p monitor. Like that would be amazing. You put all of your little toolbars down the bottom, and you can work on a 16:9 image in that same monitor.
Yes, and I think the two problems are a lot of times these bigger manufacturers just they're experts at what they do, and they're not really dialed into the marketing and customer facing side. Yeah. So it takes somebody to tell them what to do, but the only way you're going to tell a panel manufacturer what to do is by ordering 100,000.
Oh yeah.
That's it. You could tell them like, hey, you should really make this. A lot of people will buy it, and they'll be like, okay, So will you start with 20,000?
Yeah.
Like no, like it's,
Well, even that was hard because I wanted to do a Kickstarter for this, and I went to AUO, which they do a lot of
I
panels
worked
for
with them in
everybody.
my past life. Yeah.
And like, I am like, I want to do 30,000 units. Like, can we make this panel in this size? And they're like, nope. And they had just shut down the production line on that panel in that size. Like,
Yeah.
they hadn't even tore the production line down. Like, okay, you couldn't run that production line for another 6 months and
Right.
make your money off of a production line you were going to cancel anyway.
I mean, a lot of times when they do stuff like that, the reason they shut down that line is because it's like, okay, all of this equipment's about to break or starting to break, so we're not going to put $1 million into it to make 30,000.
And
So
that's fair.
It's annoying, but it's understandable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe this is a sign. Maybe that means the older stuff is ramping down, and maybe there's going to be a new thing coming out that we could use for what we need. So who knows? But
and honestly, if I'm going to have an LCD manufactured, I want an OLED. At this point, I just wanted an OLED. I don't need it to be another, low cost production, TN display.
I would love to see those flexible OLED screens in a 20-inch shape, where you flex it to be the exact flex of like an older CRT.
And well, I did that that blog post on my website about it because there is a 13.3-inch flexible OLED display on the market now, and they want too much for it. They want $1,500 for it, so it's not worth buying right now. But I could easily do the Sony barrel on that screen, and it would look amazing.
And what I would also love to see is to have, just to see if it was even worth it, but to have a custom piece of glass cut to fit that. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that's how you maintain the curve, is you put that inside the glass, and then like put some material to keep it.
Yeah.
Because the reason that CRTs were so thick or so heavy was because that glass had to be really thick to maintain the vacuum.
Yep.
So if you're just putting a piece of glass to create depth and a sense of image, you could use it would be thicker than a cell phone screen protector, but it's not going to be 200 pounds if you made a 40-inch version of it. It's, it would be 60 pounds. So I'd love to at least try a prototype like that to see, like, do you actually get it? Get the same feel? Does it matter at that point? Would you just, with the OLED screen, would you not even need the glass? But I think, because whether we like it or not, we're going to run out of CRTs at some point. Arcade machines, especially, are not going to be able to have tubes that work right.
Yeah.
So anybody that still has an arcade machine, to put something like that, a curved screen with a piece of glass mounted in its place, the whatever crazy retro tank comes out next hooked up to it, and I think that would be a consistent seller. It's not going to sell 1 million, but I think it would consistently sell. But like you said, even artists, right?
Yeah.
I guess the good thing about a flexible is you could make some flexed and some not flexed, but you could do a cheaper one without the glass that's no flex to it. And I know so many people that would use that. I was about to say as their secondary, but I bet you their main monitor too, depending. So
like I would switch out I have a 34 4K monitor at my main desk. I would switch out to 4x3. That's 4K resolution.
Yeah.
Any day of the week.
Yeah.
Like, you might lose a little bit of total space this way, but when you start getting into that 34-inch screen size and you're sitting at it at monitor depth, it's too much.
Yeah.
And you do, a 26-inch 4x3, you're pretty much at that same width, but you've now got significantly more height available for you to put anything on the screen.
Yeah.
Like, as I have it set now, I have a little 14-inch 4K screen that does 110 pixels of height, and I use that for my data sheets while I'm working. So I have what I'm working on up here, and I throw my data sheet down there. It's got enough resolution to it that I can read it very easily, and I can pop my head up, look down, and
it's a good idea.
Yeah. They're kind of expensive for what they are, but they're fun little monitors. You can get them on AliExpress for like $200 or so. But
yeah, it's fun to experiment with that. So you're still selling the 9-inch LCD CRT kits, right?
Yep.
And as I know you've been working a lot on the firmwares and on the different driver boards for it. Is there any updates on that, or is it basically the same, just with little tweaks?
Yeah, the most recent version is so the the thing that we added was the IR remote control support.
Cool.
So they come with a little remote it's I think like 5 buttons on it. It's the same as the control panel at the front. So you got a power button, you have up and down and menu and back. So it's really all that there is to it.
I still think it'd be easier to use that than the buttons in the front anyway, though. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I went down that route, because it'd be nice to just not be, dealing with all of that.
Yeah.
And when we did that, they accidentally added the ability to do a 180-degree rotation mode. So the thing that's neat about that is not all Tate mode games rotate the same direction. But if you flip that 180 mode, if you had set your game or your monitor, one way to play a Tate game, and then you want to play another one, you can just go in and flip that with that option, and now the game that is flipped the wrong way is flipped the right way.
Does that add any latency?
Nope.
I wouldn't expect it, because you're not buffering a frame to put a vertical frame in a 4x3 horizontal. You're just changing the direction of which it's drawn. So yeah, that makes sense. So
yeah, the nice thing about those, so the iPad's kind of interesting screen in its own right. Got the rain coming down now.
Wow, that's crazy. That came out of nowhere. We're also up pretty high, so it's probably going to hit a little harder than it would have otherwise.
Yeah. So the nice thing about those 9-inch iPad screens is the screen itself is DisplayPort. Mm-hmm. So the conversion from HDMI to DisplayPort is really, really simplistic in how it works, and that's why we're getting such great latencies on those screens.
Yeah.
Is there's just not a lot of work that has to be done by the driver board, because the screen itself can take a lot of that effort away. So like that stretch mode, where if you were to throw like a 1440p image to that screen, it's going to stretch it out the rest of the way. That is done on the monitor, not on the driver board. So that is just sending that directly to the monitor or to the LCD panel itself, and the LCD is just doing it. And that's kind of why it's so fast, is because it's just integrated in the LCD, and it just, this is the image I'm getting. Well, I'll just throw these extra lines in these spaces to fill that gap out.
That's interesting.
It's a really interesting, situation, and I'm sure that was, a requirement that Apple had of that LCD when it was manufactured, and that's why it does it. I mean,
yeah, because those were essentially iPad panels.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sure other tablet manufacturers took it, but that's why they were created. So,
yep.
That's pretty neat.
So, the driver board does have to do stuff. Like, obviously, something has to happen, but it's not doing as much heavy lifting as some of the other type of, adapters or driver boards are on the market. So.
And have you been able to test the latency at its native resolution to see if there was any difference? Because all of my testings, it's like almost zero difference. But.
Yeah, I have not been able to find a good testing solution that'll do the 1536p. I think everything that I've thrown at it, at bottom of the screen, you're still under a frame to the screen.
Nice. I don't know if that's getting picked up on camera, but this is certainly making it a little interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, it's it's under a frame of lag. Like if you take the time sleuth and you measure at the top one, you're usually measuring like 3 milliseconds or something like that. Or 2 milliseconds.
It was sub 3. It was like 2 point something. So that is zero. There's anybody that wants to argue that they're usually confusing frames and milliseconds.
Yep.
3 milliseconds is nothing. So that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I wonder if any of these panel manufacturers are going to be doing like 120 hertz, 240 hertz versions and stuff like that. Because I saw Art brought his 390 hertz setup at Brooklyn Video Games the other day, and I was just like, this feels so good.
So, it's really interesting with those kinds of monitors. So, like the DisplayPort based LCDs, they're only going to do what they are made to do. So most of them are 60 hertz. But when you start getting into some of the newer technologies for the way that they communicate, like MIPI and I can't remember the name of the other new standard. And then even LVDS, which is the older standard, you can overdrive the monitor's refresh rate if you have the equipment to do so. You're just going to be limited by what the pixel response time is. And that's really what it comes down to, is you have to have a pixel that can go back to being black as fast as possible. And I think OLED is really the only technology that's able to do that any type of decent manner.
Yeah.
Like maybe QLED could do it, or mini LED. And mini LED might be able to do it. I've looked really into mini LED, but it's really down to that. And like I said, the EDP, the embedded DisplayPort monitors, they will never do more because they will only take what they can. So like the iPad display with the EDP, we can only push 63 hertz because that is the maximum that EDP setup allows. If that panel exposed like an LVDS signal, we could have probably pushed 75 hertz to do native for the WonderSwan. But whether or not the pixels will look good doing, that overdriven thing is a different story altogether. But
yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. I think there's so much room for what's to come next with display technology that applies to both modern and retro. And I think it'll probably come together maybe 5-ish years from now when we're all gamers will want the same display regardless of what they're playing, whether they're playing NES or some brand new, like the new version of Tekken or something like that. So that's pretty cool. So what do you have coming up on the horizon? You just launched the Blue Retro GameCube adapter, the full plug-and-play board. I thought that was so cool. I really liked that one. So you got that coming up. Those you said will start shipping this fall, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like next month.
No, November is probably a safe bet. So this first one, because I had no idea what the market would look like for it, I wanted to just have an open pre-order for 3 weeks that anybody who wanted to could get in on it, so that nobody would feel like they're being left out. And then I wanted to order it at the end of that so that we could get them going. And I believe that Castlemania is going to also be offering pre-orders on it. We're talking that through this weekend.
Cool.
I'm going to be reaching out to a few other vendors that have expressed interest in it, and we're going to make it as widely available as possible. And with that extra help of other vendors being part of the order, we're going to order additional units outside of the pre-order, and we're hoping that this is a product that can be available as an in-stock item.
So pre-order ship, but at the same time, it's now in stock for other people to be able to get.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pre-order ship, it's an available in-stock product, and you won't have the scalpers being able to throw this up on eBay for $300.
Good. Very good.
So that was kind of one of my goals. I don't want scalpers to just ruin the fun for everybody. I want it to be available. And then after that's done, we're going to start looking into doing it for other consoles. Like the Dreamcast is a good choice.
Definitely, especially because that controller board's pretty finicky anyway.
Yep.
So
it'd be nice to have a good replacement one. And then do all of the enhancements the nice enhancements for the life of the console. Replaceable battery socket, put in the resettable fuses for the controller ports. The stuff that should have been there probably in the first place, but these consoles were only supposed to be on the market for 5 years, and at the end of that, they weren't going to be supported, and that's what they did.
Right. I mean, those are the perfect consoles to start with too, because plugging making an NES replaceable internal Bluetooth thing, I'm sure it would sell, but GameCube, Dreamcast, these are plug and play things where it's separated. You don't need to mod anything. Just the whole thing about it just seems pretty awesome. So I think you have a few consoles that you could probably do that with.
Oh yeah.
That's neat.
So and then we're probably looking to like the PlayStation 1. I know there's some Saturn models that do the same thing, but I don't know that it's a viable one to support. At least not without making it clear that you need to check to make sure that your controller board's a separate board.
Yeah, and that's when it kind of gets a little more past beginner, because for the GameCube you need to buy a cheap $1 game bit screwdriver. and you need to have a Phillips head screwdriver, and that's it.
Yep.
There's like, you don't need to solder, you don't need to really even understand what you're doing. You just need to not be a meathead and tear it off.
Yep,
So,
follow the guide, and this wire goes here, this wire goes here, and button it back up and put it back together.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, I was surprised with the support behind it, and I'm really happy with the way that it's turned out.
Yeah.
The
I imagine
product
you get
looks
quite
great.
a few orders for that.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Good. I'm really glad to hear it. I always love to see good products and good people get ahead, and it makes me happy. Especially, the three of you that put that together. You and Darth Cloud and then Tito doing the launch video. It was like the trifecta of awesome. You guys, that was cool. I'm really happy to see that shit.
Yeah, and Darth Cloud is working on even more features than we even promised with that board.
Yeah, he tends to do that. I like him.
He and Extrems are working together, I believe, and we should have some nice integration with Swiss. So
that would be incredible. Yeah, I can only imagine, like, this is probably first of all, this is software upgradable, right?
yes.
So, and how does that process work?
So the device itself only supports Bluetooth. So you need to have another device that has Bluetooth and the ability to access the web. There is a cell phone, a laptop, anything that can access a website and has Bluetooth out.
So something that most people already own, even if they don't realize it. So, yeah, I can only imagine the combination of Darth Cloud and Extrems. And I even bet what it's going to be at launch day and what it's going to be next year is probably going to be ridiculous because Extrems is just known for that. Like,
oh yeah.
Hey, you know that thing no one ever expected to even be possible? Here it is. Like, so yeah, we'll see.
He actually reached out to me on it because there's on player 1 and 2, there's a pin that is connected into the GameCube that nobody knows anything about except for Extrems. he reached out to me about it, and he goes, "What are you doing about the light gun port?" I'm like, "Light gun port? There's no light gun games for the GameCube. Light gun port." I went online, I looked it up. I'm like, I don't want to sound like I don't know anything when I respond to him, and I don't know, so I'm guessing at this one. I'm like, do you mean the bottom middle pin on the controller port? Yeah. I had no idea that's what that was for. He goes,
neither
yep.
actually.
I don't did they make light guns for it? Nope. Did they make light gun games for it? Nope.
That's funny.
So, okay. He's like, are you running it to the port? I'm like, I wasn't going to, but I guess I'll do it.
Running a trace doesn't cost any extra money, so
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I just thought it wasn't used for anything, so I didn't have it, modded out. And then I threw the UART connections from the microcontroller onto the other 2 ports, so you can have an external adapter to plug in and program it if need a hardware reflash. So
that's awesome.
That'll be documented as an advanced setup type of thing where you're not really doing that unless you really need to do that.
I still love that shit though.
But
I can't believe that. I'm excited for this project. It's gonna be neat. Do you have anything on the horizon that you want to talk about, or you want to wait until it's ready before?
Anything else that I've kind of got in the back burner is pretty much either secret or it'll be announced,
Makes
fairly
sense.
soon.
Yeah, everybody here that I've been talking to, I always ask that, and I always want to make sure I'm not pressuring you to say anything, but a lot of people, they feel uncomfortable self-promoting, so I'm always like, self-promote, we're here to talk to you, we like you, what do you got? But no, if you keep it under wraps until it's ready, then that's cool.
Yeah, and then I guess the only other thing that's coming out that I've worked on, I'm not directly selling, and that is the Mem Card Pro for the GameCube. So I'm doing that shell. I'm also doing the shell for the PlayStation 2 version. So, and both of those have been announced
The
publicly.
PlayStation 2 version was announced?
Yep,
When?
a couple of weeks ago.
How did I miss that?
Yeah, he
Or did
quietly,
I talk about it in my podcast and
think,
forget that I did? That's
I don't
happened
know.
before. I've had people be like, "Oh man, that thing you talked about was awesome." What?
Yeah, he quietly announced it on Twitter with just like a post of the his dev board that he's got plugged into it running. So
And there can't be a dual use one? You would have to have one for each?
I believe the PlayStation 2 one will work on the PlayStation 1.
No shit.
but not the other way around.
Makes sense.
There's some hardware changes that have to happen to support PS2, and the original board there's no way it would ever support it.
Yeah. Huh.
But
Well, that'd be pretty interesting because that means building a FreeMc boot system would be easier. Updating the FreeMc boot's easier. You don't have to use a USB stick and a USB 1.0 slot to transfer stuff. You can just throw it in your computer. So yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
Throw it onto the little SD card and go. And then, but yeah, I think those are the two next things that are coming from, I did the shell design work on, so.
Awesome.
I'm not directly involved with selling them or supporting them, but.
Still a product of Laser Bear, so awesome, cool. Well, man, I'm so happy to see you here. This is a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll have a great show, and of course we'll be posting pictures up and everything too.
Oh yeah,
so,
awesome. There's already been pictures of that 21-inch monitor floating around Twitter. And
oh geez.
There's so many people that are going to be a little disappointed that it's not as accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, and the shell design for that, I plan on just publishing. Like, if you want to build one yourself, you can get a hold of the panel. And it may be something that in, another 5 years, those medical applications will have discontinued using them, and the secondhand market will be flooded with high resolution, panels. They may not be in the best condition, but.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping for the other side. I'm kind of hoping a new product is released for the medical industry. That's a super high resolution 4x3 monitor that we could also purchase.
4K.
Yeah, I still have some contacts in the medical industry, so if there were ever a large company buying 100,000 of them, I could totally be like, let me get 10,000 of those over to the Laser Bear so we can,
Yeah, I did find one company that still makes the 4x3, 1536p panels, but they want $1,100 a panel. And, there's probably a few people that'd be willing to spend, $1,400, $1,500 on an end-use monitor, but not many.
No.
And I have to order a minimum quantity of 101, which 101 is just the weirdest number for a minimum quantity.
I've never in my life heard that.
Yeah.
100 as a minimum is in fact usually like we'll allow you to buy 100 just for the first run to try it out, but then it's usually 500, but mostly 5,000 is usually the number. I've never heard 101 ever from any company.
I don't even understand the logic behind that, because that's not going to be a full case. One box is going to be missing.
Maybe that's the scam. You're going to get charged for 2 boxes of shipping. Who knows? Who knows these days?
I'm like, okay.
Oh well.
But yeah, that would have been a cool panel, but yeah, it's just
cool.
It's just not feasible as a marketable product, and it's unfortunately, how it goes.
It is what it is. Well, this was interesting because we went from a cloudy day to a lightning and thunder, immediate rainstorm, and now it's bright and sunny. So whenever we switch to this dual shot, it's probably going to look terrible. So whatever. Yeah. But at least it was interesting and exciting. This was neat.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thanks, dude.
Yeah.
What's up, Todd? Good to see you, man.
Yeah.
So this is my first time seeing the Rotate stand in person. So I want to talk to you, but I also want to check out the stand. So this is your newest thing. See, I'm probably going to get that sort of in focus. I love this thing, man. That's perfect. So you've been on the channel before, you've been interviewed, we're just kind of catching up, we're hanging out at the Expo together. So let's just jump right into it. Where'd you come up with the idea for the Rotate? Like, tell us the story.
Okay, so it was a couple months ago. I was sitting at my garage, and I was having a garage sale, and it was busy for the first hour, and then after it just died off like most garage sales. And I'd have somebody out there every 15, 20 minutes. So I was sitting around just bored, and my initial thought was to just go get the Switch. I thought I'd sit out there and just play some. But for me, holding the Switch like you normally do like this with the Joy-Cons on the side, it's uncomfortable. I
don't like it either.
Yeah. After about 20 minutes or so, my hands like just cramp, and it's like, unless you have somewhere to rest your arms, it's just heavy. And I can only imagine how much worse it is for things like the Steam Deck, because it's like, that's even bigger and heavier. So my initial thought was, I'd bring it out and play with it, and I was like, oh man, I don't really want to do that because I don't like playing like that. And also, the Switch has a kickstand, but the kickstand has limited functionality. I mean, if you have the OLED one, it's not a bad kickstand. This one that I have on this rotate is the original one, and that kickstand is terrible. It's straight up is unusable.
Absolutely terrible. I agree.
And-
All those promotional shots Nintendo did of like the excited young people playing their Switch on a stand. When I got mine the first day, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not gonna really play that way, but let me see how it flop. I'm like, oh, okay, it doesn't really stand up with that thing.
Yeah. And the OLED one works pretty decently when you're horizontal, but when you're doing vertical, it'll support it, but it's kind of wibbly wobbly. It's not great. So I thought, you know what, it'd be kind of cool to have a stand. So I went looking on Google for different stands for it, and I couldn't find anything I liked. They were all just like basic ones that just set in, like it just sets in and that's it. Or they were repurposed iPad type stands, or things that weren't specialized specifically for the Switch. So that night, I started thinking about it.
I got to interrupt you for a second because you just skipped over something that's a super important point. Yes, you could physically take an iPad stand and snap it over a Switch, but it very often covers all of the wrong spots. You could put it down on top of the power button, or the volume button that covers the vents and stuff like that. I mean, it's doable.
Yeah.
Like if you already had an iPad mount and you just wanted for like, okay, well, just for today, I'm gonna do something fine, but it's not really a good way to go about doing that.
No, yeah, because you'll totally block. I mean, the way the Switch is designed, the top has the volume, power, all the ventilation, the little card slot. The bottom is USB. So yeah, you could very well, unless you clamp it to the sides where the Joy-Cons are, which I don't know how wide they go, but if you use any of these sides, you're totally going to block something on this thing. So that night I set out to start working on this, and over the course of a couple of days, I reiterated the design. I started first showing off the head of the device up here, which is where the most important stuff happens. The initial clamping action to the switch, and then I worked on the rotation mechanism. This design for this rotation mechanism came from an earlier design I have. I have a I haven't talked about this, but I started originally a few months ago. I put out a solder spool holder. I don't know if you saw that. The little vertical solder spool holder, and it has a ball bearing in it, and you just drop on a solder spool and you just pull it and it rotates smoothly. I originally started the rotate stand based off of that design with that ball bearing. That's what turned into this head. And then I removed the ball bearing because it wasn't necessary for this design. And I used the compression spring to hold tension on this. And inside of, not inside, but on the surface of this head, on the surface of this head, there's a series of notches, cave outs in it. And then this rotates around, and it has a set of interlocking notches that just locks into place every 90 degrees. So that's what gives us this rotation action here, where it goes around and just locks into place.
And what's the wear on something like that?
If you took this one right here is made of PLA, which is not a terribly durable material. If you rotate it under normal uses, it'll last quite a long time. And if you were to sit here and just start rotating round, the friction and the heat will wear it down. It'll still hold, but it will wear it down, over time. The final versions will probably be printed in Pt2 or another heavier duty material. This will still be fine for quite a long time, but yeah, over years it would wear down. But obviously you're not going to be sitting there just rotating this thing constantly.
Yeah, I like it. And you have a screw in the back. Is that for tension adjustment?
Yeah. The screw goes to the back and amounts to a 25 millimeter long spring. And these springs I repurposed off of a 3D printer bed. Like anybody has a 3D printer, these are the kind of springs that like some of the Creality printers use, that they hook the bed down and then they have screws that use the level. And these are the stiff springs. And then I used one also for the head to mount to the upright on the stand. And it has a similar mechanism in there, which has a set of notches that are every 18 degrees, which gives it the ability to do that.
So it tilts backwards and forwards, and it rotates in like 360. So it doesn't only one to the left, only to the right. Like it'll just keep going. That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
So for anybody that hasn't heard about the Kickstarter yet, you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, and it's multi-tiered. So if you make your main goal, which you're just about there anyway, you'll have high quality 3D prints of this. What's the price on that?
For the Kickstarter, it's $30.
Okay.
And that'll get you a stand, and it'll come in the box with instructions, which there's not much instructions, but it'll tell you about tensioning these if you need to afterwards. and just some basic details on the Switch.
$30 is awesome because that's not really much more than just an iPad clip that's not designed to be used on a Switch. So that's a really fair price.
Yeah, and that's if we hit the goal of $10,000, which, like you said, we're pretty close to it as of right now. I have a stretch goal attached to the Kickstarter of $100,000, which I know is quite a stretch, but that would get us injection molding.
Yeah, so I'm assuming anybody listening to this podcast has probably heard me drone on about this a million times, but just in case, to do injection molding, you need to make a mold. They call it a tool. And that costs a ton of money.
Yeah.
But once the mold is made, then you have X amount of molds plastic molds you can make from it. And that's the type of thing where the more you make, the lower the overall cost goes. So you asking for that amount of money, it's not like you're suddenly going to be making $29 on a $30 product.
Right.
You're paying for the molds to ensure that you could fulfill the Kickstarter and continue to make these. So it's not an unrealistic goal, and it's certainly not an unfair goal either. So
yeah, because you'd be looking at probably $10,000 to $20,000 just in mold cost.
Yeah.
And then after that, you look at a minimum order quantity. Most factories won't do less than 1,000, and a lot of them prefer 2,000 to 3,000. So that's why I set the Kickstarter the goal at 100,000, the stretch goal for molding, because that would give me the quantity needed to be able to produce the amount I would need for that minimum order from the quantity from the factory, and then also give me the capital to be able to do the mold itself.
That's pretty awesome. So we got to just pause for a second here. It obviously got darker in this. There was a tornado warning a couple minutes ago, and now this rainstorm just came in. So it would be awesome if we caught a tornado on camera. It would be epic if I got sucked out of the window and died because of a tornado. I'd rather not, but
you're getting it on film.
What an epic ass way to go.
Bob gets sucked out the window.
Yeah, you're holding on to the pole. I'm already out. You better swear to me if that happens, you publish that footage. Don't be like a crocodile hunter where they deleted the footage. If that's how I go, I want the world to see me flying out that window. That's craziness. So what's the quantity to hit 100,000? So how many of those do you have to pre-order in order to hit that?
About 3,000.
All right. I mean, that seems like a pretty realistic goal.
Yeah.
You just really need to. I mean, honestly, this is one of those cases where it's simply a matter of making sure that the crowd that would want this knows that it exists.
Right.
Because there's always going to be that idiot that's like, why don't you just duct tape it to the wall? It's the same thing. But like, that's not who your crowd is. Your crowd is people like me that don't enjoy playing in handhelds, but totally see the purpose of, I have a Switch, I have my 8-Pt2 SM30 Pro controller, and I'm going somewhere. Why don't I bring this with me, put it on the table, and actually be able to sit and feel like I'm playing on a little TV, not feel like I'm playing on a handheld. Because like you said, I could sit on this table and rest my hands on the table and be playing, whereas with the Switch, like I can't really do that. Like it's very uncomfortable for me. So
yeah, I mean, this was really designed for people that find it uncomfortable because obviously if you have a TV, you would use the Switch on a TV in most cases. But if you're in a position, maybe you're traveling, like we're right now traveling.
Yeah.
You're sitting in your room, you don't want to use there's TV, or if you're out and about somewhere and you want to use the Switch in a different way, you have this. And I also designed it with a thumb screw on the bottom where you can take this and break it down to make it smaller.
That's great. So you could straighten it out, take the bottom off, and throw it in your bag.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So you wouldn't run a chance of breaking something. And it has a threaded M4 brass insert in the bottom, metal insert. So you can take this thing apart and back and forth, put it together apart, back and forth.
And you're not going to be threading or stripping the threads of a 3D print, or injection molded plastic.
Yeah. Even if we do the injection molding, it'll still have a brass insert in the bottom, simply for durability. Because even injection molded plastic, you can take it apart, but after so many cycles, you start running down the risk of cross-threading the threads inside the plastic, or just wearing it flat out. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. Now, I like the rotatability. Mm-hmm. I mean this with respect. I think most people are probably just going to use it as a really cool stand that's designed around the Switch.
Yes.
But for the people that do want to, how many games support a Pt2 mode, vertical mode, whatever you want to call for on the Switch now? Are there a lot of them, or are they just...
I believe there's 50 plus.
Over 50?
Yeah. There's a whole lot of the arcade series games on there. They're emulated, but like Raiden, for example, stuff like that that have optional vertical mode in them. So yeah, there's quite a bit, and there's other ones coming out still that also have optional vertical orientations as well.
That's pretty awesome. Because I know I saw your preview video. I think I actually bought one of the games so that I could try it vertically on that. I think I just picked a shooter that looked closest to like the bullet hell shooters that I loved and everything. But that's really neat.
And then there's some collection games like the SNK, I think it's 40th anniversary collection, that has a bunch of games in it, and a lot of those have optional vertical modes too.
That's really cool. So, I mean, I got to ask on the flip side of things, what happens if you sell 6,000? Are you gonna like offer different colors or something, or is it just like cool? We got more funding, you know?
That's a good question. If somehow this far exceeds the stretch goal, then yeah, I can probably try to offer some optional colors. Because I mean, for 3D printing for the base model, I'm just gonna keep it black. Keeps it simple, keeps it easy for me.
Yeah.
If we hit that stretch goal, and if we blow past the stretch goal, then yeah, I'll probably send an email to backers asking them, hey, black, white, can we do some other colors? Maybe we can or make some arrangements for that.
Just try to match the colors of the Switch, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we can totally try to come up with some custom color options. And also, I'd like to because right now the current design uses basic rubber feet, which is nothing wrong with that. If we can get this higher, I wouldn't mind looking into a full covering on the bottom, like a rubber covering, anti-slip mat. Like if you've ever flipped over the analog consoles where they have a full rubber mat on the bottom, I wouldn't mind that. I don't know what the expense looks like on that for something of this size and this scale, but that's something else I wouldn't mind looking into also.
That's a cool idea. I like that.
So the entire base would be non-slip instead of just 4 points.
Yeah, I mean, I have feet on a lot of the stuff that I have on these things, and they're usually on this type of thing, and they're very solid. But you're right, having the entire base would be kind of cool. So
yeah,
that's pretty neat, man. I like it. Well, I hope this gets funded. Anything else coming out of RetroFrog anytime soon, or is it really just like focusing on this and some of the smaller products that you release?
Yeah, this is my primary focus at the moment. I have a couple other products. I have a full Mr. case.
Yeah, you've been teasing that for a while, right?
Yeah, I have two versions. One is a smaller, more compact version. Anybody that's familiar with the any of the aluminum plate cases, like the one from Mr. Add-ons, my plastic one's along the same size, that kind of, just barely encompassing around the base Mr. plates. Just, a simple covering, full plastic all sides. That one I've released to some of my patrons on my Patreon page, but as far as I haven't sold any of them, I haven't, because it takes some time to print those. I'm hoping to offer those to people here in the near future, and then I'm also working on a large Mr. case, which that one will encompass all the original I/O boards and have room for a SATA SSD or a SATA hard drive, and it'll be about the size of like an original PlayStation console, that kind of size.
Okay.
It'll have a lot of I/O expansion ability, and the best part is, unlike some other competing products, it doesn't require the customer to buy any kind of new I/O boards. Like a lot of the existing ones, you can use the DE10 Nano, and then you have to buy their I/O board or their USB board or their RAM because they've got it customized in such a way that it can't use the regular the stack. It can't use the Mr. stack.
Yeah. Whereas
mine is designed so people can utilize their existing investment in those boards.
Yeah, I like that because I've had so many of the different Mr. cases, and I've liked pretty much all of them. I think Pork's first case using the PCBs, I liked it, but I was like, this is kind of a pain in the ass to assemble. And then the next revision he came out with, I was like, oh, all right, this is cool.
Yeah.
But my favorite has always been either the smallest pot or the going wider. Because I don't know why, it's just preference. There's no right or wrong. I don't usually like the stack design. So the fact that you're going to spread it out and put the drive next to it, everything else, I think that's pretty neat. Are you going to have like little extension cables so that you can break everything out in the back, or are you just going to kind of leave it coming off on all sides?
Yeah, I'm getting rid of the all sides thing because I think that's one of the things I dislike the most about the Mister is the fact that it's like an octopus. You got stuff running in all directions, and it looks like a science project. I hate it. I don't think anybody would disagree with you. It looks like a science project with stuff going all over the place. It works great, but aesthetically it's a little on the lackluster side.
I mean, I like all styles, but my only opinion is that I prefer making it look like a console to put it next to my other consoles.
Exactly.
Right? Like when I'm sitting next to my computer doing testing, it looks like an awesome ass science project.
Yeah.
But it just, just opinion. I don't think it fits perfectly next to a Super Nintendo and a Genesis, but having a spread out one kind of would, I think.
Yeah, because in my case, it's going to have on the rear of it, it'll have the HDMI, it'll have power, it'll have a USB port. It'll have part of the USB ports, and it'll have the serial USB port, the ones for like external snack adapters,
Right, yeah.
and the MT32 Pi adapter, things like that. And then on the front, it'll have a couple more USB ports, power switch, stuff like that. And then on the back side, beside the ports, it'll have a slot for a SATA drive to go in and out.
I love it. That's
So
cool.
yeah.
Didn't you show a preview of something with like the MT32 Pi attached to one of those cases, or?
Yeah. I've teased out an early version of the case. I'm going to revise it because there's some things about it I don't care for, and I want to make. My ultimate goal is to make the case as easy to produce as possible. Because I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have when it comes to 3D printing. You can come up with crazy great designs, but do you have the ability to be able to produce those in any kind of quantity? And
Or even for home use, like,
Yeah.
are people's printers big enough? You know,
Right.
is it a complicated print where if you have a cheap printer, it's going to come out looking like a melted design, or so. Yeah, that's good. It's good that you're thinking about that. Keeping that in mind.
And the current design takes about 24 hours worth of print time because the bottom's about 10, the top's about 10, then some auxiliary pieces. You basically have a full day's worth of printing for one case. And unless you've got an army, 100 printers, it's going to take forever to get these cases out. So yeah, you can't sell them in any quantity in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying everything I can to make the case more compact, easier to print, while still looking quite nice. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, dude, thanks for coming. Thanks for showing this stuff off. I
thank
hope
you.
Everybody checks out the Kickstarter. And, you know, if the stand's not for you, cool, but share it with people who you think it is for, because I like it. I think it's awesome. I hope we make it.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, man. Hey, what's up? I'm here with Dustin. What's going on, man?
Yeah, not much.
So you did the 32X test suite. Could you tell us like how you even got into that? Because I remember you telling me at one point that you'd never done anything like that before.
No, I haven't. So it actually just started, I think, listening to your podcast. You said that, hey, is anyone out there trying to, I need help, getting a test pattern, just a basic checkerboard test pattern.
Yep.
So I listened to that and I was thinking, because, it was the start of pandemic and everything like that, and wanted something to do. So I was like, you know what? That's probably a good project to work on. To see if I can go in and see if I can find any examples out there, see if I can find anything on like GitHub or anything like that of any development for the 32X. There was nothing.
Zero, yeah.
Well, there was a couple projects here and there that I could find, but other than that, just zero.
When I say zero too, like historically, no one really published it. Obviously, Chili Willy's done a bunch of work on
Right.
it, and Vic, of course, and all that. But like, there wasn't like an SDK or something like that released, right?
No. So Chili Willy has kind of done like the what they call the tool chain.
Mm-hmm.
So some very light functions that we could use to like draw stuff on the screen, things like that, and trying to look at and at first I was looking at more of the assembly side. Mm-hmm. So not even the C code that Chili Willy has kind of produced, and working kind of to see if I could get something drawn on the screen. I did that. I remember sending you something, and it wasn't working on a real 32X, but it was working on emulation. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll take a look at the tool chain and I'll start using that, and then that's where it kind of began. And
you got to have some kind of software programming background to just jump into this, right?
A little bit. And that's where I kind of wanted to start. I wanted to really have, because I would say that's the biggest hurdle of software development, looking to find something to develop for, trying to find your own project. And when you mentioned that, I was thinking, well, maybe this is a good time to kind of jump into there, and it kind of went from there.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it obviously works. And so jumping from zero to that was crazy.
Yep.
So what were some of the biggest hurdles that you had to get over in order to do that?
I think starting from zero, when, if you never did this before, I think just trying to get something drawn on the screen. Trying to understand how, the 32X or even any console kind of draws to the screen, trying to get a pixel up there, trying to get like even an image up there. I think once you kind of get the hang of that, I think that's where you can kind of start to manipulate things.
Okay.
So.
And what's the code like for something like that? It's, Did you have to use a certain programming language in order to do that? Is it?
Yeah, everything's actually in C programming.
Okay.
So Chili Willy has kind of done all of the stuff for the assembly side. It's kind of getting everything ready for the systems. So the Genesis, the 32X, everything that starts up in the background. And then everything that kind of maintains the processes that run in the background when you run your program in C. And then after that, it's kind of building everything in C at that point.
That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And so everything about this is running on the 32X, right? Obviously,
Yes.
when I mean the tests, you obviously need a layer to boot the Genesis to tell it to go to the 32X.
Right.
But all of the patterns, all of the video, but the audio too is all 32X as well, right?
It is. Yep.
So now, was MD4A ported to this as well yet? Or is
Not
that
yet.
still in the works?
It's still in the works. Right.
That's going to be really interesting. It's also going to be interesting to test how the sound is blended and affects different ways, just using the test patterns. I mean, I tried out a lot of the video side of things, but not the audio side at all yet.
Right.
So I have yet to dig into that. But that was always kind of a thing, because a lot of times we weren't really sure what audio was coming from the 32X or not. So having tools to be able to measure things would at least assist in that. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty neat.
So the original need for this was because I wanted to be able to set phase manually and to be able to do captures, but also I wanted to be able to test a lot of mics, like automatic phase detection for the RetroTink 5X.
Right.
And there was no way to do that because 32X, even if you put, so just in case anybody didn't realize, if you put the 30 or the 240p test suite Genesis, even if you plug that into a 32X and run it, it's running on the Genesis layer.
Right.
So having all those things measuring the video voltage output, none of that was testing the 32X. So this would allow us to do that. So that was awesome. I was able to start measuring everything. So just that alone was huge. But having all of Artemio's awesome tools up there was fucking cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and what was pretty neat too was going through and taking because what I was doing is taking the Genesis version, and I wouldn't say it's a port per se. I would say it's using all of the look and feel of it, but all of the tests are actually built for the 32X in terms of the enhanced functionality of it.
So you had to write, you weren't able to copy and paste the code
No.
for the all white screen to here. You had to rewrite that code and just use the blueprint of the 240p test suite as the menu.
So as I was mentioning to Artemio, is that I never looked at his code in developing this. I wanted to take it from a standpoint of looking at the test suite, and when it was already running under emulation or the Genesis, and looking at those test patterns and recreating them. And it didn't really get into using the code, the kind of the logic behind there when I went into the lag test, where I wasn't really going to spend the time kind of recreating that, because our team already put the work through there and it works. So there's only probably 3 tests that actually kind of use that logic. All of the other stuff I've kind of recreated by hand, and it wasn't as easy as because a lot of the tests, the color bar tests, only show the colors that the Genesis can show, but the 32X can show 15-bit color. So I needed to recreate that whole test for the 32X because it can show more color.
That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, well, thank you so much. And you've been part of a bunch of other projects behind the scenes I don't want to talk about yet, just because I don't want to put pressure on the devs. Nothing to do with you or me or any of you listening, but I always hate to be like, yeah, this is going to be out next month, and a year later we're still like, how do we get that working? So.
Yep.
But thank you for your assistance on the other stuff too.
You're very welcome.
Hopefully we're going to make a difference with a couple of little fun projects coming up. So thanks very much, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Chris from Displaced Gamers. We are here in person. And I have to ask something because we were talking about this on stream. I was freaking out, and your name kept coming up. Have you ever looked at the code for the arcade version of Outrun?
No, I haven't actually.
Because I had an Outrun stand-up arcade machine. My ceiling exploded with water, so I sold it to pay for that. Sold it to an awesome person who seems to like it as much as I did, so it was great. But the last day that I had it, I was on stream and I was like, I want to beat it. I've never beat the arcade version. And every time I played 2 of the 3 songs, I couldn't get as far as if I played the other one. And at first I was like, okay, I actually love Magical Sound Shower, so maybe it's subconscious. Maybe I'm listening to the music, not paying attention to the
Right.
game. Have you ever seen a game where, like, the choice of music affects something? Is that like a hidden Easter egg code that the developers are like, I hate that song? No one's ever been with this.
Well, that would be something. So
would.
I haven't come across anything like that, but it is really, really interesting. So
I think it's way more likely that I was just distracted by a song that I like, but I was just really curious about that.
it's possible. I mean, it does make me wonder about how the arcade guys would go about doing their sound programming. You know, because like in the case of the NES, you have to deal with your sound after every frame. So, but and if you don't, then you start, you know, having all these notes that are holding. Like for instance, I think Mega Man 3 slows down a lot, but the music's okay. And it's because I think they prioritize the music. They're like, all right, no matter what happens, just keep the music going. Doesn't matter if the game slows down, because if the music slows down, people are going to notice it more.
Yeah.
You know, and so people probably don't notice Mega Man 3 slowing down as much as, say, if you're in the top corner of Zelda and you're fighting a lot of guys that have shooting swords, and it kind of goes, you know, it crawls a little bit, and you kind of hear it do that. So
Interesting.
but on the arcade front, I mean, unless they, I mean, you probably want to talk to, I mean, I don't know if you know anybody who does arcade hacking or arcade homebrew. That's a kind of an interesting topic. 'Cause
I know a few, but I don't know anybody who presents it in the way that you do, which is why everybody was like, ask Chris. That's the one.
Yeah, I haven't reversed any arcade games yet. I would like to. I'd like to kind of get into, well, I don't want to talk about it yet. But I'd like to get into doing some arcade games. So, but I'll try to keep Outrun on there, you know.
Because
so.
it's, you know, it's from watching your videos and from having friends like Art and Carsey and Beast and all these amazing players, that I'm starting to see things that I've never seen before. And, you know, when you talk about like the hitbox area in Turtles, like I loved that episode because it was like that, you know, I think every kid who grew up with that game still has a little bit of PTSD from that section. So
Yeah.
it's like, so seeing the hitbox, like the very last run of the path that I took at Outrun, there's one last sharp corner that comes out of nowhere. And I think, I'm just guessing that the arcade developers wanted to make it so like you have to remember that. So like the next time it's like, oh yeah, remember that last crazy turn at the end. And I got to that turn and crashed. And the very last run that I did, like my wireless headset was dying. Like, you know, that was it. I was like, all right, this is the last one. Same exact scenario, but I slammed on the brake and then I hit the gas again, and it looked on screen like I had hit the tree, but I didn't. So I was just like, this is a displaced gamer's moment right here. Why did it look like I hit the tree this time and didn't, but did hit the tree last time? And it was really because of your videos, and I'm starting to think about things like that as I play these games and analyze them, and it was really neat. So thank you for ruining video games.
Yeah, sorry for changing your perspective on everything. Yeah, so yeah, it feels really weird too, like playing games versus dissecting them. I feel like I spend more time dissecting them than I do playing them now.
Yeah,
so
I think most content creators are there too, and developers as well. Like most of my days working with hardware developers or software developers and hardware developers together, and it's like, I joke that the most game I've ever played, more than every other game ever, is the 240p test suite, because all I'm doing is testing different things. So, but yeah, I really love it, and it's the combination of you putting these things into words that people can understand, with also having some pro players explain this stuff from their perspective. Because a pro player that knows how to counter moves in a fighting game or how to dodge certain bullets in a shoot 'em up, they don't know what you know, but they know how to get around it. So maybe you should do a mashup episode and pick a pro player that's really good at explaining shit, and then just so like, I mean, shit, maybe we should ask My Life in Gaming to do that, where they pick a game that you know a lot about and pick a really pro player and then interview you separate and then interview you both at the end talking together to see like what you found separately.
yeah, I mean, it kind of goes in a bit of a circle too, because I've had people message me who, I mean, they stream all the time, you know, and they hold world records and stuff, and they'll ask me like, hey, can you look into ABC XYZ, or like, why does this happen?
Yeah.
You know, or I'll use them and say, wow, what are they doing here? Why does that happen? And then that inspires me to dive into it as well. So
That's awesome. So, what do you have on the horizon that you could talk about? I know I don't like to ever put people in a position where I'm like forcing you to talk about your next video in case you switch videos, but do you have something coming up? Do you have anything you're working on?
So I have a little bit more with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I want to do.
Nice.
That has to do with the jumping in TMNT. So because that's kind of weird.
Very weird.
So I could spoil it a little bit.
Yeah, you can spoil it a little bit because it's your explanations that make these videos awesome. The conclusions were the bonus, but like what was that? It's not the journey, or it's not the destination, it's the journey, or something shit like that. So
Yeah.
I messed that up, but whatever.
So there are certain jumps, you have to make in that game where, you can just barely tap the A button in order for it to happen. And it's basically, there are 3 different jumps that are in TMNT. And the toughest one to do is the short jump, because you have to let go of A within 4 frames, in less than 4 frames. Now the game runs at 30 frames a second, so you have a bit more time than you would if it were 60 frames a second. But think about the human equation with that, right? Think about being stressed about a jump. Do you think you're going to press the A button and let go really fast, or do you think you're going to tense up and hold it longer than you should?
I think unless somebody figured that out and explained it to you, most people would tense up. And I think that's actually probably one of the major things that separates pro players from players like me, where like I might even think like, all right, don't forget to tap quickly and go, so.
Especially a pro player that's on camera, right? Because oftentimes they've played the game so much, they could be competing for a world record, and they're on camera just kind of like, okay.
Because they have to make sure that they're not letting everything distract them. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So, and you just get used to it. Whereas if you're sitting there and maybe you don't play the game that often, or you have friends in there and you're feeling that nervous energy as well, it's like, well, let me try. Okay.
It's so funny because everybody reacts different to different situations. And like when I was playing on stage in the bands, like that nervous energy just made me better. Like oddly enough, especially when like we'd walk up and they'd see me and be like, "Are you the guitarist or the fucking accountant?" Everybody would leave and go to the bar, go outside to smoke, and then you start out playing for an empty room, and then I would get that like, I'll show all of you, and then like 3 songs in, people are coming out like, who the hell's playing? Like, oh wow, okay, like I get that nervous energy and I love it, but like when I'm doing these streams, like I almost beat Outrun and that last tree, and then I must have psyched myself out because it took like another 45 minutes to get back to it. And Outrun's got AI and logic. It's never the same because you always have different cars. You always have a random tractor trailer. Every 3 games, I would just get plowed by a tractor trailer out of nowhere. But a giant portion of that was that exactly what you just described. Like everybody's watching. I almost beat it but screwed up. Like I let myself down. I don't want to let these people bore them to death while they're watching. And next thing you know, it takes, probably should have taken 5 more runs to beat it. It took 40 minutes or something. So you make a great point about that.
That's really wild though, thinking about like beating Outrun, as an arcade game. Yeah. Essentially beating any arcade game, because how often do you go up to an arcade game and it's around other arcade games, right? And then after you get so far, you say, well, I'll move on to the next one. And sometimes I latched onto Shinobi back in the day to try to see how far I could get in that. So,
I mean, I think it's one of those things where if I was a kid and near an arcade, I decided like I loved Outrun. I always played it, even to this day. Like even though I owned one, I'm sure if there's one downstairs at the Expo, I'm going to be playing that tomorrow. But I think it would be choose your path, play the same path over and over, just like I did. People in the chat were helping me, like, I heard this is the easiest path, and then just kind of memorize and do the same thing over and over. But it's funny to see certain arcade experiences like that, because like I played Altered Beast on emulation, and it was a terrible emulation. So like I knew that was going to be a factor. But by the time I got to the last level, I was like, I would have never beat this in the arcade. Like there's 0 chance of ever playing those levels over and over enough to memorize patterns and learn how to dodge it. So it is different. Whereas, you're a kid, you spent the only money you had on one game, whether you liked it or not. Now that's your game, so you kind of learn it then and do it. So you're gonna be switching over to arcade games ever at some point, looking into them, checking them out?
I hope so. I mean, like, I would love to get into Street Fighter 2. a little bit, especially with the different revisions.
Yes.
Because I mean, they tweak, well, in addition to if you put aside like Rainbow and all the bootleg type stuff, right? I mean, that's certainly a topic on its own.
Yeah.
But somebody back in the day had to tear into it and say, hey, you know, how can we put 5 million fireballs on the screen, let you throw them from the air, you know, do all that kind of thing. So,
well, you're in the right place because there's somebody over there that's definitely in the top 10 Chun-Li players on the planet, probably in the top 5. So,
wow.
I'll make sure to introduce you over there. Because if you want to jump into Street Fighter, the Brooklyn crew. Half of the people there know so much about it. Well, I shouldn't say the Brooklyn, the whole New York crew. They're all spread out: Queens, Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn. But we hang out at Brooklyn Video Games. That's why I sometimes just call them that. But yeah, you're in good hands today. If you need any of the pro player side of things. Even Carsey's hanging out over there too. So he was the speedrunner that did Resident Evil a lot and stuff like that.
Wow.
So,
yeah, definitely. It'd be fun to get their input on a lot of stuff. No pun intended. But I mean, they probably know all the various in ROM revision 1.01. They balanced this and etc.
100%.
Yeah, and so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, thanks for coming. Thanks for doing this. I'm going to continue to bother you with my silly nerd questions. And thank you for doing your write-ups on RetroRGB because you've made me sound so much less stupid. Because I read exactly what you say on the page. I do it with confidence, like I know what you're talking about. So thank you, because I do enjoy your videos, but I'm not a programmer, so I can't explain them the way I can a hardware thing that I know about. So thank you.
No problem. I enjoy it.
All right, I'm here finally with Steve from Brooklyn Video Games. How you doing, man?
Good.
So I owe you an apology. I've been so selfish. I've been wanting to put you in front of camera for like 6 years now. But when I come to hang out, I'm always having so much fun. I don't want to stop and do an interview. So this is a long time coming. We'll do a real interview in the shop soon because your shop was awesome. But what was the year that you opened up the first Brooklyn Video Games, the first location?
The first location was 2015.
Oh, okay. So I came right at the beginning then when you first opened.
So when I was right now where Brooklyn Video Games is at, like 1 year before I was at renting like a small booth. I was there for a year and then we moved to where Brooklyn Video Games is at now. So around 2015, 2014.
So I moved to the city about late 2015. I think late 2015 in October. So I met Cruz maybe 6 months later, not even. So I really did come down within the first year then.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was a fan of the store. You always get cool stuff. We're one of the only stores you ever walk into and you got a BBM sitting there for people to play. But you did a great job. Nothing but praise for that. But Brooklyn Games and Arcade. Holy shit, you have created the RGB mecca right in Brooklyn. So it's a normal store up top, half a store up top basically. About the same size, the store portion now is about the same size as all of the original location, which is still open and everything. Yeah. And then you have a ton of head-to-head, or some head-to-head Candy Cab and then a bunch of other new Astro Cities up there. And a full streaming rig, modern PCs, and then downstairs is the whole arcade section. So that's where did that originate from? Did you find that place and from day one know that you wanted to do that? Has it been has it just been an evolution?
Yeah, so it was a work in progress. I mean, I think we all wanted something like that between you, me, Jose, everybody, all the RGB enthusiasts. But we didn't have a place, so once I saw that spot for brand, I sort of saw the vision, but little by little we built it. So it's yes, some of the stuff is mine, but a lot of the stuff is also from the community. So there's a few setups from Cruz, from Bees, Ben.
Destiny brought a bunch of the newer computers down, I think, too, right?
Arturo, Blind Plugs. I'm probably forgetting other people's names, but pretty much, we have a bunch of retro consoles, BBMs, with G-Star light switchers, and pretty much a perfect combination Upstairs is a little bit of retail, a little bit of new gen, and also the Japanese cabs.
Yeah.
Downstairs, we're setting it up more like American cabs, New Deals, Big Blues, and then all the retro setups.
Yeah. That was cool. When Ronnie went downstairs the other day, and he was just like, this is my first BVM experience. Wow, it was like everything there is in good working shape. It's either, you have a good crew that works on stuff there. So if it's working, it's in great condition, or it's just at the sign of being rebuilt because it's about to be in really good working condition.
So for the most part, right now, crews is always there when we need major fixing, or right now Superjo's helping me, Andy's helping me. They do simple stuff like cleaning, maintaining the machines, switches, buttons, simple stuff like that. And we always try to maintain everything fresh and clean and fully working.
Yeah, and I'm going to pause for a second and give a shout out to Andy. I know he's holding the fort down in the shop today, but we love you too, Andy. Next time we'll get you up here. But what you mentioned about the controllers, so downstairs you have 3 Neo Geo cabs, and you always have KOF tournaments down there and everything, but not only are the buttons in good shape, you have undamaged adapters built in, so people don't have to just use the stick that's built in. And because it makes so much sense, even though it's really good equipment. If you've practiced for hours and hours on your stick, it doesn't really matter how good the other one is. You want to go what you're familiar with. So people can show up to these tournaments and use whatever they're comfortable with.
We decided to put it on all of the Neo Geo cabs and one of the Big Blues. Just so like that, there's no excuses like, oh, my stick wasn't working, my button wasn't working. You bring your own controller or fight stick and you're good to go.
Yeah, I was so impressed by that. And I think what really did it for me was the old location. Somebody showed up with a keyboard, not a hitbox, the keyboard, and was whooping people. And I just like, that guy probably practiced his whole life on a keyboard and emulation. So to tell him to switch to a stick is unfair. So that was perfect. That really hit home for me. Like, wow, everybody can compete here fairly.
Actually, he grew up in Peru. So it's like a keyboard, which is probably like $5-10, compared to a fight stick, which is $100-200. It was a no-brainer to practice on keyboard, so that was stuck with him.
Yeah, and if you didn't start with a controller, if you started with a keyboard, that's just the way. So that was perfect.
And then Jose actually modified it so he could use it with the unmanned adapters. That was pretty cool.
That was really cool. And then that experience the other night was the first time I ever saw 390 hertz in person. Art brought his setup down. That was insane. I'd love to see us contact some sponsors and have them send you some monitors to show that off. Because probably 3 or 4 times today as I've been doing these, we've mentioned how I don't think I have the words to properly explain the experience. You have to play it in order to understand how massive a difference that is.
It's the same thing with RGB. You have to put somebody physically RGB in their face so they can see what it is.
Yeah.
And once they see it, you go back home, you cannot see it.
Yeah.
If you go back to your Super Nintendo with AV out and you just saw RGB, you're never going to be able to go back.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with what Art is trying to do now.
Yeah. The difference is though, well, obviously I love RGB and all this stuff. You're not going to have a worse experience on a CRT at least if you have composite, right? It's not going to look as good, but the game is still equally as playable. Whereas if you're playing a game on kind of even a low lag monitor, but with all the motion blur and with input lag, and then you start playing with 390, and it feels like you're playing on a CRT. It's like I don't know how you could go back to 60 because I'm not even a pro player, and I was playing with 390 for only 5 minutes, and Art was like, "All right, you gotta put it back to 60 now," and I was like, this feels clunky. It feels like sticky almost. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's just I guess a lot of people get used to playing on 60 hertz that when they transition, they feel it like it's too fast. But it's just they gotta get used to it.
Yeah.
But it's a big difference.
Definitely. So what are your favorite games to play? Do you play a little bit of everything? Do you love the arcade stuff?
So I grew up with Super Nintendo. That's what I primarily felt. that I hold my collection. Super Nintendo. I play a little bit of KOF, but I really just like to host events, do tournaments, run brackets, and just support games that people actually show up for, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Like in the little shop, we were running KOF because that's what we had space for. But in this new location, we have more space and we're able to support different games. As long as people show up for their games, we're going to keep running.
It's an awesome attitude to have. I was there recently when you had a Smash tournament going on. It was packed. It was awesome. I've been there for a bunch of years. Yeah. And I always love the crowd that shows up there because it's every type of person you can imagine. And no one gives a shit about anything but the games. It's like, it's such a welcoming environment to just show up. So
yeah, at the end of the day, that's what it's about, you know. Different type of people could be in the same room and just you play games and that's it.
yeah, who was one of your KOF players? I don't really think speaks English. Every time I came, he'd always come over, high five me, say hello, and like, you know, he doesn't really speak the language that well, but he still makes me feel welcome every time I come. Like, I love shit like that.
Probably hand you a Modelo too.
Yeah, allegedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. We brought a lot of people that have traveled here. I always make sure they go to see your spot, and it's kind of neat that everybody around the world is that, you know, we've had people come from, I mean, Tim came from Australia, like, you know, all over, Ronnie from Lebanon. Everybody has always commented about like the quality of the spot. So
I was talking to our team and his friends, and they were a little bit tired, but they saw the store, they purchased some stuff, and they had to leave a little bit early, but I told them, I'm like, next time if you guys were good, I would have drove you down to the other store, open it up, let you guys see the other location.
yeah,
Because we have more retail in the first location, more merchandise. But yeah, they love the second shop, and you know, they're into retro, so
yeah. And I didn't realize there was that hotel that was just a 10-minute walk away. Like it was right there, and you're right off the N and R is in that one. So it's just, and for anybody that's not in the city, it's not just the subway. There's many of them, but this is a very easy one to get between Manhattan. So it's a, you know, both the first location wasn't hard to get to, but it was a little farther away from Manhattan. But this is about as easy as it gets. So.
Yeah, not like you said, there's a lot of hotels around the area, and it's pretty accessible.
Yeah. Absolutely. The only problem was right after you moved in, they started the construction on the street, so my parking spot is now temporarily gone.
Yeah.
There was like 3 or 4 times I pulled right in front of the shop and nobody was there. I was like, yeah, that's my spot.
Yeah.
Not temporarily, not for long. So.
We'll see. Hopefully they bring me back. Let's see, we got enough bike lanes. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
When I came the other day, I dropped everybody off because I was like, well, and you know, it might take a long time to find parking. I dropped them off, I looped around, and the first spot was open. No, that can't be. There's no way it's that easy. It was. So I got lucky. But, for people that have to drive in, because you know you're going from places, is there any tips for parking? Is it just drive around till you find something, or is it like, oh, well, I'll tell you one: do not park in the pharmacy parking lot and leave your car there because they'll try. I don't want anybody to get messed with, but. But is there like a street that's usually empty, or is it just one of those typical Brooklyn drive?
Like just go around in a circle, and you're able to find either on right in the corner by 61st or by 60th. You do just go one time around. You should be able to find parking.
The worst time I was there, I zigzagged around and maybe took 5 minutes to find a parking spot, which it's funny because if people are out in the Midwest, they're probably thinking 5 minutes to find parking, and anybody around New York's like, only 5 minutes to find it. So,
now, New York parking is tough. Not only in Brooklyn, it's just
everywhere. Even the Bronx, Queens, it's all the same. It's all just more cars than spots. So try your best.
To the city, I'm never driving.
Everybody says that. I never minded. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Especially when I would come down in the truck because if somebody hit me, I wouldn't even know. Things already old and beat up, so who cares? But, cool. Well, thank you for coming to this. Thanks for hanging out. Obviously, I'm always going to continue to support the shop. It feels like my home away from home. So thank you so much for all the years of this shit. This is awesome. All right, we'll see you later. All right, what's up, Dan?
Hey, how's it going?
Excellent to freaking see. Always fun to see friends, and
I'm glad we're past COVID.
yeah, absolutely. Now we're on a monkeypox, so here we go.
Yeah.
I mean, we've obviously done a bunch of interviews together, so we don't really need too many intro. But I absolutely gotta first of all say, awesome updates on the HDMI kits or the digital kits. Whatever, excellent work. Very cool to see those updates. But everybody would jump through the camera and punch me in the face if I didn't ask you about the Infinity Switch and the morph and the updates on that, and what's like the public official status of that at the moment.
Everything is still on track to move forward. We're just waiting on certain chips to make certain products happen. We get a lot of demand for Ps2 kits, or a lot of people asking where's Ps2, and we're just waiting on certain chips for that to happen. Infinity Switch and Dreamcast HDMI kit should be available this year, end of the year is the plan. Morph will depend on chips and things like that. So
That makes sense.
there's just no promises. Anything could.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody at this point that doesn't understand that has been in a coma. So I think it's completely fair for people to get frustrated as long as they understand that it's not Pixel FX sitting there like, let's hold on to our stuff just to piss people off.
Yeah. Like every day we're almost looking to see, is there any other chips, or I'm sure some of the suppliers get annoyed us with us asking, can you get these yet? Can you get these yet? And so
gonna do.
But we do have hopes, and it seems like it's kind of settling a little bit. Like stuff is starting to not be as bad.
Yeah, the example I gave earlier today was you can see the pinhole of the light at the end of the tunnel. You're not there yet, but you do see that we're not continuing the descent into no parts. At least there's something starting to come back up. So I got to see bits of the Infinity Switch today. That looked just as cool as it did in the pictures. But I did have a couple of questions, especially because I've been messing around with Extron crosspoints lately a lot more than I have in the past. Mm-hmm. So the Infinity Switch links together, but then it's obviously just going to be, as long as it is, or as wider as it goes. Are there any plans to make it so that it could, do you have right angle adapters so people could make it a square if they had?
So you can make it as long as you want it, depending on power. Maybe, but you can hook up multiple switches together. So the last unit can hook up to another unit. So let's say you have, your room, you had all your certain starts over here, or your components over here. You could actually have multiple switches and then run them through.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be one long one.
That's cool. So how would they connect them?
There's a USB jack on the last one on the last module that feeds to the next module, and then you still have to use the base output of the one into the last unit.
That's awesome. Okay. And is there, and I'm not implying that you need this, but just out of curiosity, is there any matrix functionality, or is it really just select your input and select one input, and then I know you're going to have choices for the output, but you're able to route it analog out as well, right?
Yeah, so you select it's pretty much, you got all your inputs and then you have dual output.
Okay.
And your dual output, you can choose, one will be VGA, or it's whatever you put in. So if you put in SCART, it's going to output SCART over VGA. So
the D-sub connector is the output, and whatever signal is in goes out that. So even if it's component, if it's S-video, it's just on the D-sub pins, and you use those Monoprice or Amazon breakout cables to get it.
Yeah, or if you have an OSSC, you can plug that cable directly into your OSSC, and that handles all the AB3 on that handles,
VGA component and
RGB.
RGB, just not composite or S-video or anything like that.
Yeah.
And this other output is HDMI?
No, it's also analog.
So two D-sub outputs?
Yeah, so you have it's the hat for that can be anything. So it can be VNC, VGA, RCA.
Okay, so the two outputs is one D-sub connector and a hat of your choice.
Correct.
That's awesome.
So the setup is more like you have your CRT that you go through your hat setup, and then you have your VGA output to your scaler or whatever equipment you have.
That's very cool. Is there plans for any transcoding modules in there at all?
We've talked about it, and that's something we do plan to do, but right now,
Not launch day.
yeah.
But because it's modular, if it takes 3 years to get around to it, you don't have to buy all new stuff. You can just add the transcoder piece, right?
Exactly.
So I fucking love this design. That's really cool. So that's going to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. I mean, there's always going to be crazy idiots like me with a CRT wall that needs an old Extron matrix switch, but I think most people would prefer that, what you're doing. And especially because you're not doing some slimy thing where you have custom outputs that only plug into your scaler and your consoles. You're just like, no, if you want our switch, cool. If you want our scaler, cool.
The Switch is more set up to be a standalone unit. It's not really set up for any specific scaler like that. It's really just about having a Switch.
Awesome. Somebody was asking before, are you going to be doing a JP21 version?
So the way with the new hats are, it's very easy to make a hat. The hats will be open source. So people can obviously modify them, change them to their own needs. They can make D-terminal JP21s, sky's the limit.
If anybody wants to do that, just do us all a favor and use like a bright orange SCART connector, so we all know, like, warning, this is not the Euro standard, it's the Japanese standard.
On our runs, we do say Euro SCART for the one we're selling.
Awesome.
So there should be no confusion about what you're plugging into, but that doesn't mean that you can't plug in the wrong cable and blow something up.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's a switch. It's not up to you to fix people plugging in the wrong thing. You're just designed to be a switch.
And we're not really worried about our switch being damaged. It's all 5 volt tolerant, so
so if somebody sends TTL through, it's totally fine as long as obviously the target device can accept it.
well, we won't output 5 volts, so if you plug in a 5 volt, we'll drop it down to 3.3.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that's actually pretty cool then. I like this, the safety measures built in.
Yeah, but there is a way to there is a bypass that can bypass all the amps and have a direct output. And that's for like high speed, long runs, 1080p, where you don't need any amps in the line. For that, if you plug that in, you will get 5 volts out.
Okay.
So that's kind of like, it's up to you to not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, obviously for the morph, like, you know, chip shortage, you're trying to get everything done and together on it. But a long time ago, you published like what it would do, what you'd like it to do, some fun ideas. And one of the things that you mentioned was possibly putting a time-based corrector in there for VCRs. Is that anything that you've looked into at all, or is that just something like we'll get to it after the switch, or after it's after the main design is finalized?
It's actually something we really haven't talked about, but we did initially mess around with it, like some 3D foam filterings and things like that for laser discs. It's something that can be potentially added later on after you already have the unit.
Okay, because that's I'm working on in the background a video about VCRs, and to be honest, why most people probably don't need to use them at all. They're mostly useless, but there are obviously many situations, and the number one by far is I have a bunch of family tapes that are important to me. I want to save these forever. How come when I plug it in to whatever, there's interference in the screen, it won't sync, I don't get any signal, and time-based correction is something that would obviously fix that. But I'm also curious if that would fix weird sync issues with like PC Engine and stuff like that, Master System. And I can't, all of those database or data video time-based correctors are all $1,000 now. I used to get those for like $100 each. So if that was kind of one of the interesting things is like, if that was integrated in, how would that affect video games, or just wouldn't at all? Obviously it's not gonna add lag, but like on the good side, how would it affect video games?
I don't think there would be any issue with detection of those consoles on the morph.
No, not for the morph, but if you're running everything through the Infinity switch and you have one going into
a time base on the Infinity.
No, in the morph, but actually no, I'm sorry. It's been a long day, but so stuff like that's not going to affect the morph. You're not going to have any sync issues at all. And will the morph have analog pass through, or is that all going to be handled through the Infinity switch now?
What do you mean by analog pass?
So like you input RGB, and will there be an analog output of the switch, or of the morph? I'm sorry, it's been a very long day. So let's just say I don't own the infinity switch, I own the morph. I plug in an RGB signal and I want to stream with the morph and play on my RGB monitor. Is there going to be an analog pass-through as well? Because that was one of those things that maybe you do it, maybe you wouldn't.
Right now, it's not in the plan to have. It would be, you need to split the HDMI output, and
I mean, it wouldn't make sense anymore because you did the infinity.
Yeah, you could split it before you send it to the scaler.
Right, and when you were first talking about what you might do with the morph, the infinity switch didn't exist yet, so that's why analog pass-through is probably discussed in that one. But
yeah.
Cool. Now, you said you're trying possibly for the second revision of the Dreamcast Digital, the DC Digital, part shortage allowing, of course. Is it still going to be something that if you've already installed the original, you could just swap the boards without any soldering?
Exactly. Well, so the Dreamcast has 3 soldered wires at the bottom on the kit for 2 controller lines and a reset. So we replaced that with a flex cable. So you can remove those wires, install the flex, which requires a little bit of soldering, but it's pretty easy. Or you can still use the wires, but you have to unsolder the wires on the current board.
Okay.
But it is a drop-in replacement. It uses the original flex. You don't have to touch the main flex at all.
So if anybody hasn't seen pictures of those, the main flex that attaches to the chip is very hard for any beginner to install. I would never suggest a beginner try that ever. But the other little connections are just very basic. So.
Yeah, it's just one single wire, and you just touch your iron and it comes off, and you just put them back on the board.
Awesome. And have you finalized the feature list? Is it basically going to be like PS1 digital?
Yeah, it'll be the FX framework, so everything that will run similar to that will run all like that.
That's very cool. I'm really interested to see the FX framework's smoothing on the Dreamcast. Because I know I've said this a million times, but I was blown away when I did the 960p doubling on my OLED TV. Because it was a sharp scale, and then the OLED's soft scaling from 960 to 4K. It felt like I was playing a PS3.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm really curious how that's going to work with the smoothing filter going to a higher resolution like that. So I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anything else in the works that you want to talk about, or is it just those trying to struggle around the part shortage?
We're still going to stick to our roots. Kits are what we've always done, so I think I still think our primary goal. We always talk about new ideas. Who knows what will come out?
It's so funny because when you first created Pixel FX, I was talking with all you guys, and your biggest problem was which idea to focus on, and now your biggest problem is which chips are available for which ideas I want to do. So it's massive pain in the ass. But thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for sticking with it. I can't imagine it's easy now with this.
And hopefully next year things will kind of be back to normal, and we can just.
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be 2024. Everything's going to be back to normal. Next year is going to start.
I'm going to be optimistic.
I hope so. I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong, but. Yeah, it sucks. All right, well, thank you very much. I missed Christoph and Woozle. I hope we get to see them as well soon, but I'm glad you showed up too, so thanks, man.
All right, thanks.
All right, fine.
Shimmery.